Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on procurement strategies to evolve your digital ecosystem. I'm delighted today to have with us some phenomenal speakers who are going to talk to you about what they're doing in their own district. So to get us started, let me introduce myself. I'm Jill Hobson, K-12 Institutional Program Manager here at IMS. And with me today, helping host this event, is the wonderful Kara Jenkins, our Director of Marketing Communications. Just to give you a little bit of background and to help connect today's webinar to our entire program, the K-12 Revolution program, it's important to help set the context that you have lots of different systems in your district, and these systems typically may not be working together. But the vision that we have is that they should work together. And with the K-12 program, we can help you figure that out. So what do we need to do? Well, we're going to need to have an environment where we have a set of technical standards that are in use by lots of different products so that you have choice in what products you want to use. But at the same time, we want those products to be able to work together and easily connect. In addition to that, and really the point for today's webinar is that we need to help you understand what to ask for and what the benefits are going to be. That requires some planning on your part as a district or state leader to help determine how you want to move forward. And the great advantage of IMS is that you can be part of a group of members who are trying to accomplish the same thing you are and share in that network of folks who are trying to get there. So what does it take to really get involved in the Digital Learning Revolution program? First and foremost, we can help you. We'll be glad to talk with you and help you get started. We'll help you take a look at some of your top 10 products and find out whether or not they are interoperable and how they might work together. We can talk to you about getting that roadmap started within your district and the conversations you might want to have with others that work in your district. So together with all of the folks who are members of our district, both institutions, state departments of education, as well as vendors, we are building that rapidly growing ecosystem of products that are available for your use. And you can always check to see if the products you have are, in fact, certified for IMS standards by visiting our product directory at imscert.org. So this K-12 program is essentially a way to take all of the various resources that IMS Global has and the many different standards for interoperability that we have and set up a strategic plan for how you're going to achieve that total ecosystem with everything working together. And the first tier of that program is deciding to make the change, deciding that you want things to be better and more interoperable. And that does require making purchasing decisions or renewal decisions. So today we'll be talking about some strategies that you can use to begin working on procurement. Now I'd like to introduce our guest speakers for today. And let me begin by introducing Dr. Barbara Nesbitt, who's Executive Director of Technology. I'm just going to tell you just a little bit about her district. Go ahead, Barbara.
Hello. Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Nesbitt, and I'm the Executive Director of Technology for the School District of Pickens County, which is located in the upstate of South Carolina. And we have 26 schools altogether, a little over 1,000 students, and just a little over 16,000 students. And our learning management system is Schoology. We do single sign-on from both Schoology and from ClassLink Launchpad. And so we have quite a bit of our digital content that flows either through Launchpad or through Schoology, but we are in our third year of using both. So we've at this point have some pretty stellar, I think, teachers who have been able to use the interoperability tools and digital content to really move the needle on personalized learning with students. So it's exciting to see what's happening in our classrooms. I think I went too far. Is that good?
Barbara, that's great. Thank you. And let me introduce the dynamic duo from the School District of Lee County. Today we have with us Dwayne Alton, who's the Executive Director for Infrastructure Services, and Rob Stratton, the Coordinator of Instructional Materials, Media, and Instructional Technology. And I'll let them tell you a little bit about their school district.
Okay, my name is Dwayne Alton, and as Bill mentioned, I'm the Executive Director of Infrastructure Services, which you can think of as the IT department in Lee County. And along with Rob Stratton and the folks in curriculum, we're a very big IMS district, and as you can see, we actually don't have 191 buildings. So I think the slide, there's an error on the slide, but we actually have about 100 locations. We're a Chromebook one-to-one district in middle and high, and we have a shared environment in elementary school. We are utilizing a variety of content from several of our content partners, and we have basically integrated single sign-on through ClassLink. So all of our applications that our teachers use on a daily basis, they launch from ClassLink's product, used to be called Launchpad, and they access the content itself and assemble it in our learning object repository called Safari Montage. And from that point, they can inject the content into our LMS, and we have some users on Blackboard for it's a small number of users, and we also have the majority of our users using Google Classroom. So the teachers can utilize the content from Safari Montage, and that content can be from any of our partners, HMH, Pearson, Compass Learning, or Edgenuity now, Cengage, any number of them, and they can assemble the content from all of those partners into individual assignments and inject those directly into our LMS. So we're a big user of the IMS Global interoperability standards, and of course, as we'll talk about today, we have had a great deal of success adjusting our content partners and pushing them in the right direction.
Great, thank you so much. Rob, you want to add anything there?
No, I think Dwayne's pretty much summed it up. But the main thing is that there's a partnership in the district between the IT side and the instructional side, curriculum side of the house as well.
Good point. That's part of the success that Lee County has really enjoyed and worked hard to get there for. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Barbara and really let her tell the story of what she's doing in her district and how she's been able to work with her vendors to help them get on board with the vision that she has.
All right, thank you, Jill. So I'm going to start by just showing kind of a little visual of our digital ecosystem, and we've included some of the network graphics in here over there on the left-hand side. But the real kind of power here is on the right side of your screen, where you look at ClassLink as our single sign-on and Schoology as our LMS, and how we're able to take learning evidence and performance data from Schoology, from these other sources that we have access to, our state database that has summative assessment data, interim assessment data in it, as well as data that comes from other sources like our digital textbooks or BrainPop or ClassWorks, other content, and pull it in for teachers to see. We also have done what I think is a very good job over a period of 3 years of getting all of our web applications and our textbooks into using one of the IMS Global standards so that we can access that either through ClassLink or through Schoology, and oftentimes both ways. So it's really very exciting. So there's a mix of some APIs in there, but most of our content providers are able to link and offer us that interoperability through the IMS open source standards. We also use Safari Montage as our learning object repository, and that links into our system very well, because from Schoology, as teachers are building their lessons, they're able to link to any of the objects. We have thousands and thousands of them inside of Safari Montage, and that's actually where we keep our textbook common cartridges. So when we began this process over 3 years ago, when our district first got involved with IMS, one of the first things that we did as a district was to sit down and actually kind of do an inventory of all of the web applications and digital resources that our teachers were currently using, in an effort to map out, you know, what we currently had, what was existing for us, what were our teachers using, and how could we move these vendors into adopting open source standards so that the web applications and online textbooks would work with either ClassLink, which is a single sign-on, or with Schoology, or with both, which many of them are now. So this screen that you see here is a list of the web applications that we use in our district. Notice just one of these boxes, they're in alphabetical order for the most part down there, are textbooks, and we've got hundreds of textbooks in our district's digital textbooks when you think of K through 12th grade in all subject areas. This next slide actually shows what we've done with our textbooks. We've just captured a screenshot from what's really a 20-page Google document that we'll be glad to share a link with you to this document so you can see it. But we have spelled out every textbook that we use in our district and how it is accessed digitally. And most all of our textbooks now have single sign-on from ClassLink. Many of them also do single sign-on from Schoology. We auto-roster most of them through the one roster standard, and many of these also have cartridges that are available in Safari Montage that can be pulled back in to build as teachers are building lessons inside of Schoology. So we make this available for our teachers so they can find their textbook and know exactly how to access that textbook digitally. And for the most part, the teachers have no list on this. The textbook is automatically in ClassLink for them. They link to it from ClassLink, and they're auto-rostered, or the content is assigned. As students come and leave their classes, they get automatically added to the rosters of these textbooks. This next slide is just kind of shows a picture of all of the textbooks where we have the auto-rostering with one roster. Some of these also have, with the Earth and Asterisk, we have the cartridge or the thin common cartridge inside of Safari Montage. And I'll also say this thing we love about one roster is that it also does content assignments. So it allows us to assign the content out on the vendor's website through, based on the student and teacher's enrollment in our student information system, which in our district is PowerSchool. And then this has a list in ClassLink Launchpad of the different apps that manage single sign-on, as well as passwords for us. And this particular slide shows the applications that do auto-rostering and auto-content assignment as well. And so kind of getting to one other slide that shows the ones that we actually have LTI links to in Schoology. And what's so exciting for us at the district level is we don't really want to tell our teachers how to use digital content. If the teachers want to build with content inside of Schoology, that's fine. If they want to go out to the BrainPop website or Pearson's textbook website, that's fine as well. We just want the access to the digital content to be seamless and smooth for our teachers so that we're saving instructional time for them. And so how we got to where we are now, where almost all of our web applications and textbooks are available through interoperable standards from our single sign-on platform or from our LMS, is first by identifying our existing web applications and just saying, reaching out to the vendors. We sent emails from 3 years ago and said we want to adopt one roster, we want LTI links from Schoology and from Launchpad, and if you have common cartridges, we would like those as well. And just over a period of 2 years, we have worked with the vendors. We've built relationships with vendors. We've met them at the IMS conference in May, and just have developed some phenomenal partnerships with all of these different vendors and their engineers and their salespeople, so that we now have an interoperable digital ecosystem for our teachers. And as we purchase new web applications and textbooks, we insist on compliance with single sign-on and one roster. We ask for common cartridges where they're available, LTI links from Schoology. We've talked with all of our textbook providers before we purchase, and most of them we already have a relationship with, so it's really easy just to reach out to, say, Kim from HMH or from McGraw-Hill and say, Kim, are these on your platform, your ConnectEd, and get an answer. And almost all of the new web applications and textbooks are following these open source standards. And what is really interesting to us is that we're really just 2 years into having this, and our instructional service team adopted a platform this year that wasn't quite ready with one roster yet. And our teachers do not want to use it, and they've just told us, well, we don't roster. That you need to do the rostering for us. I'm not building my class rosters. So what we found is that teachers are really expecting that all of this stuff works together, and they are depending on us doing the list for on teaching. And it really boils down to, what are the minutes worth? And 10 minutes a day that we can save for a teacher, where they're not wasting time for kids going out and finding a URL or remembering what their login and password to a certain site is, where we have just made the process of using digital tools so easy and smooth and seamless for our students and teachers. If we can give teachers 10 minutes a day, that adds 30 instructional hours. That's a full week of instruction back to a teacher's classroom. And we're seeing that is has just freed up our teachers to have more time to listen to a student read, to talk to a child, to ask them questions, to give another instructional task that's rigorous and worthwhile. So for us, it has been very, very worthwhile, and we have found the vendors to be very, very easy to work with and very willing to give us what we need to make their platforms work in the ways that teachers and students today have come to expect.
Great. Thank you so much, Barbara, for sharing that. Just a reminder to those in the audience, if you have questions for our speakers, go ahead and submit them through the Q&A panel, and we'll try to get to them as soon as possible. So, Barbara, a quick question for you before we transition. I know you went over the different standards you're using, but a question came in, which IMS standards are being used? So perhaps you could go over them.
Absolutely. We use one roster for rostering our content, and to me that is just the one standard that saves so much time, because the teachers then do not have to assign content. They're based on their enrollment in PowerSchool. The students and the teachers get the textbooks and the web applications that they need, and it's all managed by my staff. And the students come in to PowerSchool by the next day. All of our sync processes have run, one roster has run, and the students have access to all of their textbooks, which is so much faster than a teacher. Sometimes the teacher will plan a lesson and they'll say, turn to this, instead of turn to this page, it'll be go out to this website. And then they realize they have a new student, and that student's not in the website. So they may say, well, just share with a neighbor and I'll get to this. But it may be a week till they remember to go back and add that student to their roster. or they may have to remove a student so they free up an access code. So the one roster is probably one of our just all-time favorite standards. But we also have LTI links that we use inside of Schoology as well as Launchpad for managing single sign-on. And some of our vendors are starting to send information back to our grade book, and one of those is ClassWorks from Curriculum Advantage. If our teachers do builds with their content in Schoology, there's a button that the students can hit that sends their grade back to the Schoology grade book, so the teachers don't even have to go out to that other platform to see what the performance data is. And we think that's going to become more and more popular as time goes on because teachers expect that. We use Common Cartridge and Thin Common Cartridge. And we have many of our textbooks are available in Safari Montage, and the teachers can build inside of Schoology using those links. I'm trying to think what I didn't cover. I think that answers it.
Okay, and then Barbara, another question before we move on. Does one roster single sign-on allow access or interoperability with individual student data in state longitudinal database?
I think it depends on the state longitudinal database. Our state longitudinal database in South Carolina is Enrich, and Enrich does not take data back from LTI links. We are actually in our district, and I think there's a movement among many districts in the nation, looking at building our own dashboard to get some information back into a kind of common place. And we'll be looking at the the open source standards in order to kind of facilitate that. But I think it may depend on what your state longitudinal database is as to whether the information either flows into it or out of it into another application. I'm not sure if I answered that fully.
Okay, well, if there needs to be any follow-up to that question again, please go ahead and submit that through the Q&A. And now we can move over to Dwayne and Bob, School District of Lee County.
Thank you. So our slides are really focused on the procurement process that we utilize for working with our vendors. And as you can imagine, years ago, we had a lot of challenges around getting the vendors to adhere to standards. And this has evolved quite a bit over the last 3 years, and we've had a lot of success in a lot of areas. But to talk a little bit about what we expect from our vendors is we do expect them to travel along the path with us towards compliance. And the reason I say it like that is because we have worked with vendors that when they came in to work with us, they were not interested in IMS Global Standards, and we quickly got them working in that direction. But one of the things we find is that a lot of times the resistance from some of the companies had to do more with worrying that they were going to be able to actually accomplish it technically. And a couple of years ago, we would go to conferences and we would hear people say companies, there were a lot of companies, like even large companies like Pearson, that weren't doing one roster. We were actually already working with them on these standards, but it is sort of a two-way relationship where we're requiring these particular standards for the companies as they come to do business with us, but at the same time, they needed a partner to develop on their end the components that were going to provide the interoperability. So the slide that I have up here right now shows this year what our minimum requirement is, what our preferred level of integration is, and you know, where you are as a vendor if you're a rock star. And you can see that we require single sign-on. We use ClassLink. You know, our preference is always to use LTI to link between applications, but we do have some of our vendors that don't support LTI at this point that are working on it. So in the interim, what we do is we allow them to integrate with us through ClassLink, which can use a variety of technologies, ADFS, SAML, OAuth, for example, and we present it to the user as the same single sign-on as any other application. So to the user, it doesn't matter what that technology is on the back end, we make that work. But we do require that they have the capability to integrate with single sign-on. Most of our vendors are either at the point where they can do LTI linking or are going to be there by this summer. And then rostering, of course, we use one roster. And when I say that we're on this path towards compliance, one of the important pieces to mention is that we change our requirements annually to align with the evolution of the standards. So, for example, last year when we were working with new vendors for a content adoption, we might have gone and said, we'll support one roster 1 or 1.1 for you. And the ones that were on version 1 were allowed to compete for our business, and they were allowed to eventually be awarded. But now we're saying, as of this next summer, you must be on version 1.1. And you'll notice that there's specific items on there with an asterisk. Those are items where we not only require that they're compliant, but that are also certified with IMS. So we think that the one roster standard and the common cartridge standards are far enough along that the vendors absolutely should be certified for those types of standards, LTI as well. But there are others that maybe we're not as comfortable with where the standard is, and we understand some of the vendors not being compliant with some of the things like caliper. So if you see here, to do business with us, you have to do single sign-on, you have to be one roster 1.1 certified, you have to be able to deliver your content in either a thin or full common cartridge. So we don't have our teachers going to different platforms to gain access to the content. They all go to Safari Montage. Assessment, right now, we know that a lot of our vendors, their assessment system is on their platform and is not easily delivered through other mechanisms. So we are at the point where we're sort of accepting that, and that'll change over time. And many of our vendors can only provide us their assessment or performance data from the students' objects through a daily import. So that's the minimum requirement. What we'd really like to see is have the vendors on LTI. One roster 1.1 is the minimum, but we'd rather have them on the API version versus the CSV version. And you can see the common cartridge requirement is the same, but we want to see the objects that they're providing us, the content that they're providing us, to be smarter. And I'll give you an example. If you are taking a Compass activity that was delivered to you from your teacher, the teacher goes into Safari Montage, may select the Compass interactive activities as part of your lesson. They send it to the LMS. The student logs in, they're performing those activities. Now, those activities are recording formative information about the student's performance throughout the performance of the activity. And so instead of waiting for summatives at the end, that data is coming back to a platform. And what we would like to see ideally is that information automatically travels through to our analytics system so that the teachers have real-time information. And the mechanism that we are putting out there for that is Caliper. And if you've worked with Caliper, it does need a lot of work. So we have made some compromises in that, on that standard. But our goal is to have everybody feeding that data to us in real time so the teacher has a real-time picture of how the students are doing. Then, of course, if you're a rock star, you've already integrated all of your assessment pieces into our systems via QTI as well, and then that data comes back via Caliper. So those are the levels, and when we go through an adoption process, the vendors have to essentially commit to one of these levels. And so we can, through our process, give preference to the vendors that are further along that path to the various compliance with the various standards. So, and you'll see the adoption process, and this is really around what we would call a traditional content adoption, it used to be a textbook adoption, starts back in September. So we will have the vendors come in for a kickoff meeting, and whatever content we're adopting that year, whatever subject area, they're going to come in and meet with us. We're going to go over those requirements. And the vendor is going to have to, at that point, within 2 weeks of that meeting, they have to commit to what level they're going to be able to reach so that we can prepare to work with them throughout the process to get to our go live, which would be at the end of July. Now, during that time frame between September and early spring, around March, April time frame, The vendor has, this is when our evaluation committee is reviewing the content and shortlisting, narrowing down which vendors' packages they want to acquire. So once we get to that point, we open up for testing. We need the vendors to be able to show us that they're not only are they compliant, but they can actually do it in real life. So we open up sample rosters, and we open up access to our test environment for our LOR so that we can actually work with the vendors to make sure that they can consume our rosters, assign content properly, and then also deliver the content through our through our learning object repository, and that their cartridges work. And of course, all of the pieces that come with cartridges, making sure the metadata is loaded properly, the LTI linking is done properly. Okay, so, and then if there are any issues, we can work through that with them to the point in June where at that point they have to certify on a live system that they're ready to go, and then our go live is in July. So there's a lot that obviously happens in between the process of bringing them in and making the commitment to a vendor. But you can see that during these windows of time, this is actually a two-way, again, it's a two-way relationship where they will work with our staff, and then we will provide the resources they need to test with our applications to make sure that everybody is ready. So I don't know if Rob wants to add anything.
Yeah, I think when we think about onboarding new products, our first step is really to give them a screener for them to identify where they are in that journey. Are you a level 1, level 2, level 3? And we allow them to self-identify where they are, and that really helps us begin the education process with all vendors on the expectations of the district. So anytime a vendor reaches out and looking for a foot in the door, their first response is to complete our screener to see if they're district compliant. And then once the decision's made to engage, it really becomes a learning opportunity for everybody, so that, you know, we spend a lot of time demonstrating how these standards impact instruction in our classrooms, and we'll walk vendors through what LTI looks like, what the cartridge looks like, and kind of giving them the big picture. And then the other piece that we really work to is we establish what I call digital day one, that all materials must be ready to go on this day, and we just work from September all the way up to whatever go live is to make sure that everybody, existing partners and new onboarding partners, are ready to go. And our expectation is that all of this is ready to go that first day of school when teachers walk on campus, so that they have access to resources for professional development reasons, and just as they're prepping for the first day that students walk on campus.
Okay, just a reminder that if anyone has any questions for our speakers today, you can submit them through the Q&A. And I'll transition this back over to Jill now.
Thanks, Kara. I appreciate it. I want to share a couple of questions with the team here. Rob, you mentioned earlier, that you were collaborating with teaching and learning, and I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about how you work with other divisions so that, everybody's on the same page about where you're headed.
So my role, I am actually in the curriculum department, so I work on the academic side of the house, and I feel it's my role to make sure that from the curriculum side, that I'm able to communicate with the IT side of the house on the expectations of how we want curriculum to function in our classrooms, and the ease of use to reduce friction in the classroom. And so, you know, we spend a lot of time making sure that both sides are moving in the same direction, that we have the same expectations. And, you know, I think the struggle that districts have is there tends to be a wall between the divisions. We really work hard to make sure that all of us understand the expectation, understand the standards, and can speak to them. So as we're communicating out with schools, we're communicating with vendors, all of us are on the same page with the same message.
Great, thanks, Rob. So Barbara, how have you worked with your senior leadership, like superintendent and school board, to help them understand why purchasing products that are interoperable is important?
Well, really, all you need to do is get a couple of things working interoperably for them to see what it does for teachers and students to get them on board. So it really wasn't a challenging sell. In fact, you know, now I think in all of senior leadership is, especially with the instructional services team, I mean, is very educated as to what the standards are, and they're like, do you do one roster? Do you have common cartridges? Do you have LTI links? We have not, I think so, probably the one standard we still are doing some work on is the QTI assessment banks. We have some that we have pulled into Schoology, but that's some of the work that instructional services is doing right now with procuring some assessment banks and working with teachers to build those. But when you see what this does for teachers and students in the classroom, it's an easy sell for senior leadership.
Okay, great, thanks. Hey, Dwayne, what advice would you give to districts who are looking for a first step?
Well, the first step to me is organizational, right? You have to make sure that the instructional divisions and the IT division are on the same page. I think that's critically important. It is probably where the reason that these initiatives fail more often than the technical issues. But once you've gotten past that, I think as far as working with the standards, absolutely everybody should be, at this point in 2018, everyone should have a single sign-on solution and everyone should be using one roster. That would be the starting point for me. If I were going into a new district that wasn't in that position, that's where I would be heading first. Then, obviously, dealing with the content delivery through common cartridge and that, and then work your way up to things. You know, QTI and Caliper are a little bit more difficult because of both the state of the products out there and the standards. So, you know, start with getting your organization in order, and then, you know, take the low-hanging fruit, which is single sign-on and rostering.
Great. Thanks so much. Well, y'all, this has been an amazing opportunity to learn from you, and we're going to go ahead and now begin to transition on into talking a little bit about where our audience can go for additional resources and to learn more about what we've talked about today. So the first thing we want to mention is that all of our IMS Global K-12 members work together to develop resources to share with anyone who's interested in getting started on this journey. And you can find those resources on our website. So be sure to check out this link to get into those resources. We want to ask you to mark your calendars for the next webinar, which will be in April. And we hope you'll be able to join us. We'll be beginning to talk about that foundational level, and Dwayne mentioned that business of being able to get your single sign-on or your rostering taken care of. Barbara talked about how important that was and how it saved time for teachers. So please consider joining us and telling all of your colleagues to come along as well. And then we want to invite you to attend our Learning Impact Leadership Institute. This is a unique event that we hold every year. This year it'll be in Baltimore. We have lots of sessions targeted specifically for K-12 members and K-12 interested individuals to come and learn. You'll be able to hear both Barbara and Dwayne and Rob at that event, so it'll be another opportunity to learn from them. There's great opportunities to collaborate and talk about where we want to go next. What is it that we need to be doing at IMS Global to help support you in your vision for a digital ecosystem? We have some specific related resources that you'll find on that K-12 page I spoke of earlier. These resources include an overview of the Digital Learning Revolution program that we've talked about today. We have numerous procurement documents and checklists available to you, and we want you to check those out. One of our most recent additions is the K-12 Statement of Intent. This document helps you with language so that you can begin to say to vendors, I expect you to implement the standards. I expect you to stay up to date. So when new versions of standards are released, we want to see you implement those new versions of the standard. This is language you can include in a contract renewal or in an RFP. So our action items today for you are, be sure to check out those resources in the K-12 playbook. Go and check out more about the Digital Learning Revolution program and let us know if you'd like to have a meeting and talk more. And also look for today's webinar page so that you'll be able to gain access to all of the resources for today's session, as well as the recording and other links to information relevant to today's presentation. We want to thank you for joining us today. Hope you have a great afternoon.